Welcome back to another episode of Buckle Up, an ultra running conversation. Hi, Mandy. How are you?
I'm good, Brian. I'm just enjoying some sunny weather here in Windsor, Colorado. It's probably like 70 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is Celsius, but you can tell me because now, after our new guest, you are all in with the Celsius calculations and mileage.
Actually, you're completely off. I can do the kilometers to miles calculation, but I cannot do Fahrenheit to Celsius calculations in my head. But
Okay,
Google
so
helped me
then
out during the show.
how many kilometers did you run this morning?
I have not ran today, so that is an easy answer. And I'm going to bike later this afternoon. I have a bunch of meetings after this recording, and I'm going to get out on the bicycle and trying to save my legs a little bit. I think I was texting you during my last man standing this weekend.
Yes, how did that end up?
So I was trying to support my friends. They were doing a neighborhood backyard ultra out of their garage here in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. And it was like 7 or 9 of us that started. A few others jumped in a little bit later and different laps later on in the day. I went with the plan of only doing 4 laps, and I completed my 4 laps for 16 and some change. I don't know what that is, 16 and a half miles or so. And it was fun. It was great to participate in the community and support my friends in their backyard ultra in their garage. They had a great aid station set up in their garage with chairs and food and like vegan, gluten-free muffins and all these cool little treats that I had. But I also have a wife who works at the hospital locally and worked this weekend. So I wanted to make sure that my kids were, entertained for the rest of Saturday afternoon. And so I called it quits after 4 laps, 16 miles. But I also needed to, and I actually didn't have it on my calendar to run that far after last weekend's 87-mile debacle at Old Dominion. I was supposed to bike this weekend, so I was a little banged up from it, so I didn't do any training on Father's Day Sunday. I went to the hot springs pool with my kids, and we went to breakfast with my in-laws.
Oh, that sounds fun. How's the recovery going? Like, how did that 16 miles feel mentally and physically?
Physically, during it felt fine. It did feel pretty rough Saturday night. I was a little banged up. It was quite a bit of pavement, although they try to minimize it by putting us on some single track trails that run next to the pavement. I did still run on the pavement. I don't know if the pavement hurt or if it was just the mileage that hurt, quite honestly. I probably didn't need to run 16 miles, 6 days out from an 87 miler that I just completed. But the recovery is going decent. I'm finding my groove. I did some dog walks and some easy runs with the dog here in my neighborhood, but nothing too crazy, obviously. I need to get back into it. And like I talk about in this episode, I'm struggling a little bit mentally with like returning to sport and kind of getting back into the space. I also feel like sometimes a DNF, even though it's mental, it actually physically hurts more. If I'm not on a high note, right? I didn't get the buckle and finish, in a good spot. I'm not riding that high roller coaster. I'm kind of like riding a struggle bus right now. And so a little more challenging to kind of get in the headspace of getting back into it and feeling like I kind of belong in this space sometimes. So we talk about it in the episode a little bit here.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing when we're running, like the reminder of our body is so receptive to what our mind says and what our mind is telling it to do or how we're feeling. So I think if we come out of a race that we were successful in, if we're banged up, it's like this badge of honor, like, oh yeah, I feel like garbage physically, but that's a good thing because I crushed my goal and I got that belt buckle. And when you come out of it and you DNF, you might feel like, well, I DNF'd and that I feel like garbage because I wasn't prepared for it. And that's why I DNF'd and woe is me. And that physical response, I'm sure I don't know anything more than what I know, but I'm not a professional in that realm, but I'm sure that there is a chemical response there that does not aid in the recovery process where physically you actually might feel a lot worse because your mind is telling you that you don't belong there or you're a failure or whatever those naysay thoughts that we've all experienced are.
Yeah, that's right. Our guest today, Steve Sammut Nurminen, he has got a YouTube channel, and actually one of his most recent YouTube videos was touching on like post-race depression, the post-race blues, and post-event blues. He doesn't race a ton, but he challenges himself with these really hard challenges. You'll hear all about it in the episode. Afterwards, that downtime and that mental struggle for me is a little more weighted even today, 8 days out from the race, because I wasn't successful at it. So we talk about it in the episode a bit, but it's real, and it's something that we all struggle with. And Steve even mentions is that like we don't talk about it enough, and so it's a great reminder that it is a real thing. It's not just you that's struggling. It's something that athletes struggle with, and it's a good reminder that it's not uncommon.
Yeah, he got into the sport like a lot of people during COVID and found himself experiencing homelessness and went through a really hard time. And his saving grace was getting out and movement and running. And he really quickly, it seems like, went into running for the cause. So you'll hear about all of his different adventures where he's raising not only awareness, but funds, but really interacting with the community who's in need of experiencing, the homelessness or food shortages and not having food supplies. Also the mental health component and including them on his cross-country journeys that he's been on. And he does some cool stuff, personal challenges on treadmills and other ways that are a true testament to just the reason why. I think he even has a post on his Instagram somewhere about remembering the reason why, doing what you're doing. He was a pretty humble guy. I think at one point he talks about he's not running a whole lot of mileage, but he really is running a lot. He made me feel like I was running negative 500 kilometer miles.
Yeah, I asked him about training, and he spills the beans on what his training looks like, and I was like, I'm nowhere near there, which is fine because I don't plan on running 100 kilometers a day for 30 days. So to each their own. But one thing I find interesting is his approach, and yes, he's raising funds for these great organizations, and I think there's some power behind that, right? Like when you're running for something bigger than yourself, it kind of helps with the motivation of like, it's not just about me, and it's not just about like, oh, this finish line or this medal or this buckle. It's a bigger cause, it's a bigger purpose, and I think that really helps drive myself to go farther and push myself to limits that I thought might be impossible.
Yeah, and I think using social media for the right way, like he said, him posting about his adventures, yes, he's getting a lot of good responses, but that also holds him accountable. And it gives us, I think we need to spread more of that. Like people get shamed for posting about their runs. I mean, if it does any sort of good and it helps inspire someone, or it makes you feel good, or it makes you feel like you held yourself accountable today because you're posting about that thing you said you were going to do, then post away, use it for good.
Yeah, he was a really nice gentleman. It was a great conversation. I think we could have kept on talking for another hour and a half, but we all have lives to lead. But otherwise, yeah, we're going to plan a meetup somewhere, maybe in Malta. What do you think?
I would love to go to Malta. I have a friend who lives in Malta. She commutes back and forth between Malta and the States. Actually, we should interview Stephen Castle, who is partners with Ivana. She's a lovely individual. She's actually been out here and she helped Steven crew his 200-mile solo finish of the Wild West Relay.
Okay. And I think I saw that video on at the Welder Medal pre-race, night before pre-race festivities, I'd call them.
Yeah, the Run Wild film, which maybe I can just give a plug for that quickly. Yeah, so Run Wild is a YouTube documentary. You can find it, I think it's tagged in the Run Windsor YouTube channel, or just Google,
And
Google
in the show notes now. And in the show
notes, link to, would love for you to see it. It is a 45-minute professionally produced mini doc about the Wild West Relay. It's a 200-mile point-to-point race from Fort Collins to Steamboat, but this film highlights more the team adventure of this race, but also the solo undertaking of it. My friend Steven ran it in, I want to say it was 54 hours. Quite a bit of gain. It goes up mountain passes, Rabbit Ears Pass from Fort Collins up to Steamboat. I think it's 17. I should know this. It's my race, but there's a lot of races. I think it's 17,000 feet of gain heading up. So it's a pretty cool film, if I do say so myself. I didn't produce it. My friend James did. He was out there on the course, and at one point in the film, James is running alongside Steven and I, as I'm interviewing Steven towards the end of the race, and James is running in flip-flops 3 miles from the top of Rabbit Ears Pass down towards the city of Steamboat. So it's a fun one. But yeah, we're speaking of that, Brian, we're gearing up for that race this year. And we are looking for, obviously we're always looking for runners, but we're always looking for more nonprofit groups that want to get involved in this event. It is a big give back to local nonprofits. It doesn't have to be a local nonprofit, but we've got, sororities, youth sports groups, churches, libraries, different organizations all spread out along that course. And the history of Wild West, since its creation 23 years ago by someone other than me, me, what is that any nonprofit groups that come out, just like a lot of races, get paid for their time out on the course. So we want, obviously, people out on the course to take care of our runners and be eyes and ears on the course for us and communicate, because it is 200 miles point to point, and I have a very teeny tiny team, but it also is a way for them to raise funds for their organization. So if you know someone that wants to get out and do good for both the running community and a nonprofit group, get in touch with me. We'd love more help. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, it sounds great. I think that's a win-win, right? You got your charitable community, and you're looking for some more additional funds, and you're helping the ultra running community by supporting athletes that are really challenging themselves in their own journey through sport, right? And it's a win-win. I mean, it's win-win-win, right? Because then you have people out there on the course helping those runners, more eyes and ears, more volunteers, and everyone wins in the whole end of the game. So, well, thanks for tuning in, guys. We appreciate you. Again, like, subscribe, share, comment, all the things. And check out in the show notes. There's a bunch of show notes in this episode. There's Mandy's movie. There is some links to Steve and his charitable organizations and what he's doing, and a link into his YouTube channel. So check all those out. We appreciate you. And without further ado, here is Steve. Enjoy. Hi, Steve. Thanks for taking some time out of your day today to talk to us about your journey in running.
Thanks to you for the invite. Really appreciate it. Hey, guys.
I want to tell a quick story about the power of social media. And of course, there's so many keyboard warriors in this world and people just hating on each other on the social media aspect. But I actually have a good story today, so I want to share it. And I think it's important to share the good ones to highlight some positive that comes from social media. Steve and I have a mutual friend on social media that before recording, we talked about, we've never met. His name is Kevin Erickson. He lives in Ontario, Canada, and he follows both of us and comments, and he's really engaging. He's super supportive. He's always willing to give me some good feedback on the stuff I'm putting out in the world, in the podcast world, on social media, in my YouTube channels. And he suggested you, Steve, as a guest. And I didn't know his relationship to you, and sent me an email and gave me all the places to find you and all your content. And here we are. Now we're recording. So I think it's just a good feel story of somebody doing the right thing with social media and using it for the power of good. And I really enjoyed Kevin, and thanks for the shout out, Kevin, and the connection, because I think this is going to be a great episode.
Yeah, likewise. Shout out to Kevin. Similar to you, I haven't met him as well, but again, we've connected online. He's very supportive, and I guess this is the running community in general. Everyone just works together, so it's a really great space to be in, to be honest.
Sounds like we all need to plan a trip to Malta maybe and get Kevin out there and go for a run.
That's right. Malta sounds way better than Ontario, Canada, but I'll go anywhere, really. I don't care.
Likewise, as long as we have our running shoes. That's the important thing.
And Brian's dirt bagging skills.
Yes, I do like to sleep in my vehicle. Thanks for your reminder, Mandy. I appreciate that. Thanks for the shout out. Steve, I think Mandy spilled the beans, but you're in Malta. And tell us a little bit about your journey. I think you're back home at Malta, visiting some family. But tell us a little bit about your athletic journey and how you found yourself in this space.
I'm one of those COVID stories, actually. So
okay.
I started running back when COVID hit. I think it's around 5 years ago now. And I come from a sports background. I played basketball for around 20 plus years or so. So I was always a bit active. I had a bit of a healthy lifestyle kind of when I was playing basketball. But my lifestyle outside of basketball was very unhealthy. I would binge in Malta. There's this lifestyle, especially over the weekends, where everyone goes out and parties and binge drinks at a very young age. So yeah, I got sucked into that as well. So luckily I was doing sports on the side, so that kind of kept me in check. But other than that, yeah, it was just partying every weekend, sometimes during the week as well, so it was a bit crazy. But then fast forward to COVID times, and I discovered my love for running. You could say I hated it before. I can actually use the word hate. The reason being that at basketball practice, running was taught to us as a punishment. If you don't do this drill or you don't do that drill, you've got to run laps kind of thing. So it was instilled in me that you only run if you do something bad, kind of thing. So, but yeah, during COVID, running was the one thing where you could literally just put on your shoes, get out the door and move. without any restrictions. During those times, from one day to another, there could be restrictions around meeting friends or family or even doing group sports. With running, there was none of that. So this is why I got sucked into running, kind of. It took me a while, though, to actually appreciate it. It was a bit forced during the early days and weeks. But yeah, I mean, now we're here 5 years later, and I just love it. I run every day.
I think that's a little bit of an understatement. I mean, in 5 years, Steve, you've done just a ton of challenges. I mean, they're just, I don't know if they're specific events, right? I mean, you're not hitting the starting line of your local marathon or anything like that. You're doing some huge challenges. You're trying to use those challenges to spread good in the world and raise money for different foundations. Tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you've challenged yourself with and some of the foundations that you've spread
Of
your
course.
good positive vibe to, if you don't mind. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, as you said, as you touched on, they're not really, I don't do organized races. I do participate in organized runs. Like I've done a couple of backyards here and there. I've run around 9 marathons as well. But I would say that most of that running is sort of preparation as well at the same time for the bigger runs. And normally once a year, I put these runs together where I just come up with a route myself, get a small team together. It's very important. I've realized that over time. And yeah, normally just run from one side of a country to the other. So the first time I had actually tried that was back in 2022. So 3 years ago. And I attempted to run across Sicily, which is the largest island in the Mediterranean, and from west to east. And that is 350 kilometers, give or take. So I had tried that in 2022. I did not manage. But if you had to ask me, until today, that was my best experience from all the runs that I've tried, to be honest. I had to stop, unfortunately, after 240 kilometers. My feet were completely butchered. So yeah, there were a lot of lessons taken from that run. But then a year after that, I attempted it again, just under 350 kilometers, and I managed in 70 hours. There was no sleep or anything. And as you mentioned, I do those runs for a good cause. So I normally run for charity to raise funds to help people who are struggling with homelessness. Something which probably I'm mentioning for one of the first times, I think, on your podcast is I actually experienced homelessness myself for around a year. And this was just before COVID as well. And this is why I got into running during COVID, not only because of what was happening around the world, but I was also going through some rough times myself back then. So this is why I ran to help homeless people, to be honest. And then last year, the biggest one yet was I ran from west to east of Thailand, 748 kilometers, just over 9 days. So yeah, and the same thing, to raise funds, to provide meals to people who don't have a home.
So, Steve, painting background a picture, I just had a question about, you mentioned experiencing homelessness and then that COVID time. Can you tell us kind of briefly, like, what were you doing around that time? What led up to all of that? Were you working? Were you with family, friends? I mean,
I was actually working, but that's another thing as well. I was made redundant because of COVID. So I had maybe 1 or 2 months left on my contract work. So I didn't have a home as well. I had a falling out with family, which today everything has been reconciled, which is really great. But yeah, so I was living with a friend. So I had a roof over my head. I just didn't have a home. Yeah, very uncertain times, to be honest. And mentally, I took a massive, massive beating. And I was literally just outdoors, whether it was running, walking, swimming. I was doing a lot of exercise, just moving. And that kept me sane, to be honest, looking back.
For our listeners on their long run right now that are tuning into this, I did the math for you. 350 kilometers is a long ass way, or 750 kilometers is 466 miles. That's the most recent one. And the other one was 217 miles across Italy. So just to kind of to give you the perspective, I know you're trying to run and do the math of what a kilometer and a mile was. So there you are, listening. Steve,
Lucky.
I think it's obviously I think it's a worthy cause, and I think it's relatable as well. I too, I don't know if I'd say I was like homeless, but I didn't have a place to rest my head for about 18 months of my life in my much younger years. I couch surfed and lived on people's couches. There was a few nights I slept in parks just because I was kind of wearing out my welcome on people's couches, or they had other family in town. It was kind of awkward to have their friend on the couch. So I think it's relatable and a challenge that we see, firsthand. We, in a deeper level here in the States, in Colorado, in a pretty affluent communities, and we see homelessness even in my town and Mandy's town. I'm sure on the Front Range there's homelessness. It's just it's a pandemic and it's worldwide. And how do you think we tackle it? What's the approach for tackling such a monumental process, do you think?
Really good question, actually. And it's becoming a massive problem all over the world. I can tell you that, here in Malta, such a tiny island of a population of around 500,000 people, over the last couple of years, we're actually seeing more homeless people as well, like a big rise in that. And it's very concerning as well, just being a very small place. I mean, there's no easy answer. Raising awareness is always the easiest way, let's say. And again, through the power of social media, again, going back to how you started this call, using social media in the right way. I think there's so much that we can do. Spending time with people. I know that there's a lot of when it comes to food, for example, there's a lot of waste as well. I've done several food runs as well, not only here in Malta, but even in Thailand. And it's crazy the amount of food that we throw away and that can go to good use. And it's actually still very good quality food. Again, this is just touching on something small when it comes to homelessness. But, we take a lot of these small things for granted. Having food on our plate, having a roof over our head, even just giving someone a meal can maybe give them the sense of security that they need just for that one day to actually try and better themselves and get out there and do something, That's why, for me, I see it's all connected. So there's no easy fix, unfortunately.
And Steve, in this journey, you're obviously raising awareness. I'm assuming you're raising funds towards the cause. So I'd love for you to touch on that, but also the influence part of it. It sounds like you kind of dug yourself out of some deep, hard times through the power of movement and exercise. Have you also used this mission to inspire others who are struggling and having a good time to go the route you went, which is a lot harder than kind of just leaning into the woe is me and then, living in that state forever? Like, you've used endurance and movement and running to really empower this getting out of that hard time. Do you have any success stories there of other people that you're helping in that way, just from the motivation standpoint?
Again, through social media, I've connected with a lot of people that I've never met, and they actually have their own stories. I've had people actually reach out to me who have stories as deep as having addiction problems, and they get out there and they exercise. And I'm not saying, that it fixes their problems, but they're in a space where they're feeling much better about themselves, and they feel they have the confidence to actually feel like they can do something about it. And it's encouraging to see that, even if it's just one person, it's amazing. So this inspires me then as well, to just get out there and move, because as you said, back in COVID, movement and exercise is what actually got me out of that hole. So yeah,
I like the approach, and I think it's the appropriate one. I think that the three of us individually, sitting here talking on this podcast, I start to think of like the big picture and like what can our government do and what can the world do as a whole. But really, I like your approach that it's a singular level, and it's just spreading the word and doing it by action and in reinforcing it on a singular level and hoping it changes one person. Because really, that's like the ground level of what we can do, right? I can't really influence, as a single individual, I can't influence my town government or my state government or even my federal government in ways that I would like.
This is it. You know what? I've been there as well, trying to think of the bigger solution, let's say, to the problem. And you just go crazy thinking about it. And it's a waste of energy. And over time, especially the last few years, what I've realized is, just control the controllables. A lot of people get out there and protest and all that, and that's fantastic to see. But I think as well, what needs to happen is things need to happen on a smaller level as well. Like, it's fine to protest and to speak out against things, and that's very important, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I think people should be, taking on some smaller actionables themselves to try and make a change. Again, directing your energy in the right direction. So it's not easy.
It's not easy. So you have a new project coming up too, I believe. I think in the summer you're going to do a run across Thailand, if I'm not mistaken, for meals for people in need of meals. If I'm not mistaken, can you talk a little bit about that?
So that is the plan actually. Idea is to put a run together, a route in Thailand. The idea was to run across 3 or 4 different countries in Southeast Asia, but due to the timing and visa issues, it's not possible. So we put a route together around Thailand, and we're still putting everything together. We haven't finalized everything, but that should be the next one. And that the idea this time is to go for the longest. That'll be the longest run in Southeast Asia if completed, hopefully, and that'll be over 30 plus days. That is the
And
plan.
how far is the route? And in 30 days, what is the average distance you need to cover?
It'll be over 3,000 kilometers, between 3,000 and 1,500 kilometers. And the idea is to run 2 full or 2.5 marathons every day.
Wow. So you're talking about 60 miles or 100 kilometers almost a day.
Exactly, yeah. Somewhere around there.
Yeah. Well, we all know what 100 kilometers is over here. It's 62 miles, and that's a
the
long
only
way to
one we
go.
know.
Yeah, that's the only one we know. Yeah, and a 50K, and a 50K.
And I'm on the other side of it. I struggle with the miles.
I'm a race director, Steve, so I shouldn't struggle with that, but I still struggle with that. You started talking earlier, and I was like, I can't do the math. I know Brian's got his calculator out because it's just like Brian said, it's just a shit ton of miles. That's all we calculated that out to be.
Yeah, a lot. It's a lot.
So what is that crew? What is that crew preparation looking like right now, and how many people will be out there assisting this?
To be honest, I like to keep the teams very small. Normally just 3 people, a very bare minimum. There'd be a driver, of course, with a support van. And normally there'll be someone taking care of just to make sure that I eat, my nutrition and all of that, and just keeping me motivated. That'll be normally my partner, and someone documenting the whole thing. So a videographer and taking care of content and all of that. But then that's what I did last year when I ran from west to east of Thailand. And I'm hoping to keep the same team together for this one. What I've realized over time is team is everything. It's more important than you can have the best running plan in place, preparation and all of that. If you don't have the right crew with you, it can all go to shit. And I've experienced that on one of my first runs. You know, the crew, they weren't experienced and the tiredness got to them. And they started yapping at each other, and there was a lot of friction between the team. And I felt it. Mentally, it was very tiring. Besides the fact that physically I was already struggling. So crew is everything. On every run, you know, even it doesn't have to be a multi-day run. Even when you have your crew, you know, you're doing can be a 100-kilometer run or a backyard ultra. It's so important.
Do you have someone on your crew that is who's your favorite person that helps you dig out of those low mental places?
My partner, again, the crew I had last year in Thailand, it was the first time they had done it, and they did wonders. I was really surprised what they did. But my partner, she's Thai, and Thai people in general, they have a saying in Thailand, Mai Pen Rai, which means no worries. And that is their way of life. You know, everything is no problem. Everything's going to be okay. And I fed off that. I fed off that energy, you know, last year. It was really great.
It's nice to have those mantras that kind of bring you back to a singular focus, right? I use them often, different ones in different scenarios, but I like the mantra idea, and it kind of singular focuses you back into what you're actually there for, right?
It sounds silly on the outside, but it actually works, you know, when you apply it, as you know.
Brian, what's yours?
Yeah, I was curious as well.
Gosh, I mean, I get super singular. I do a lot of I like super simple ones like breathe in, breathe out, relax, you know, repeat, breathe in, breathe out, repeat. I'm worried about is the breath right now. And so it takes away the next mile. It takes away the finish line. It takes away the drive home. It takes away the stress of work or life or, you know, what my kids are doing or my wife's doing. You know, it just kind of brings me back to the present moment with breathe in, breathe out, repeat.
Brian, I started giggling there because the way that you said that made me think of that song, the relax, get to it. Now I hope on your next ultra.
Frankie goes to Hollywood. Are you talking about?
What's that? What are the words?
Frankie goes to Hollywood. Relax. I think it's relax from Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Now I really hope that sticks in your head.
I lived when that song was alive, Mandy. I was alive when that song was popular.
I wasn't. I'm the young age of almost 40.
Almost 40. Steve, this run across Thailand, I touched on the beneficiary, but can you maybe elaborate a little bit more about the beneficiary of this particular project coming up and who the beneficiary will be and how what that looks like for you?
Yeah. So until now, basically, I've been doing my runs for organizations, NGOs here in Malta. I know that soup kitchen is very big in the US, and we actually have a soup kitchen here in Malta. And I normally help to provide funds. Basically, how it works is I raise funds, then there's a middleman. The funds go to the middleman, who is he's a meal provider. He prepares all the meals and everything, and then he delivers them to the NGO or soup kitchen. But this time around, we'll be teaming up with an NGO in Thailand, And I've actually been out on a few runs with them. What they do is they rescue food. So they spend the whole day rescuing food from hotels, restaurants, can be any establishment, and then they deliver meals to these poor communities in Thailand. And I mean, the food is I've actually eaten some of the food myself that they collect, and it's still really good food. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That
It
they
was
actually
deemed as waste, right? And it was going to go to waste or to the
Yeah,
recycle bin or to the
this
trash
is it.
or the landfill or whatever they're doing in Thailand. But
It's
it's
crazy.
still edible and delicious, right?
Yeah, still really good food. So yeah, this time around, I'll be teaming up with them and to raise funds basically to keep their organization going. The idea as well is to have checkpoints along the run still need to be established, and they have their own vans which can carry around 3,000 meals at a time. And the idea is to establish these checkpoints across Thailand. They will meet me at these checkpoints. I will stop during my run, and we will hand out meals to people as well. So that'll be
That's
really nice.
awesome. Yeah. That brings us down to the ground level. I love that idea. So it's not like you just running blindly and raising money and then somebody eats the food later on. You'll be the person in the front face behind the meal being handed out. That's great.
Exactly. That's the idea, in fact. When it comes to these rounds, I like to be as hands-on as much as possible. It's very easy to raise funds. Get a check and just hand over the check to people and say, here's your money. I like to actually get involved, and help out as much as I can. Same with the team as well, So it's really great that we all work together.
Steve, a 100 kilometer, 62 mile day is pretty challenging. And then to do them back to back, do you have any like recovery techniques, or how do you plan on surviving 100 kilometers a day? I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but how how does that look for you? And I mean, I've surely done it myself for maybe the better part of 4 days, and then the race for me was over and completed, and so I can't fathom doing that for another 26 days if I've done it for 4.
And what was the worst part for you at the end of it then? Was it physically, mentally?
Well, I actually a couple different points. The feet were an issue or always a concern, I guess. Taking care of your feet is really important, and I've learned that over the years. Actually, our friend Kevin that we mentioned earlier took a video of mine about foot care and used it in his last race, and he gave me some really great feedback on it. So to go back to Kevin, thanks again, Kevin, for watching that. But I think foot care is really important, and so my feet have always been a little bit of the challenge. But we could touch on it in a little bit too. I think it's also the mindset or the postpartum race blues, right? I get these really low points after finishing such an event, and I'm foggy already because my body's depleted and I'm probably a little nutrient deficient. But I think the fogginess and all that also has some issues with the mindset and where I'm at, and things seem boring after running for 4 or 5 days in a row. I just kind of lose touch with a little motivation and all those things. But those are the challenges for me.
Yeah, that's one of the toughest parts as well. The feet, even for me personally, I always have an issue with my feet. They after a long time, after a few days, they tend to break out in it looks like a rash. My feet get really red blotches, but I have like a burning sensation. They feel like, not that I would know, but they feel like they're on fire if I had to describe it. And then they really start to itch as well. And I'm just constantly scratching and scratching all the way up to my calf. That's always been an issue. And even last year when I ran across Thailand, it was the same thing, but we managed it last year, especially with the heat in Thailand. I'm probably going to challenge you here as well. I'm going to speak in Celsius, 40 degrees. I have no idea.
No idea.
Me neither.
I'm going to Google that.
It was 40 plus every day during the run in Thailand. So that's way super
It's about
hot.
105 on the Fahrenheit scale. I Googled it before Mandy did. So
You beat me by a second. Mine says 104 though.
I said 104.
I'll take
Oh, I said
104.
105. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was trying to be right. That is really hot. So
Really
when you train, are you training in heat for that as well?
As well, yeah. In Thailand, I've been doing a lot of running outdoors. I try to make it a point to do a lot of runs outdoors when the sun is up. Not that it makes a difference. In Thailand, it's just hot 24 hours.
Yeah.
And if it's not hot, it's just extremely humid. You're just dripping with sweat. But yeah, heat training is very important. Luckily, I come from Malta, where peak summer, July, August, is also around that temperature. So I've done a lot of runs in the past as well, 12 noon, 1 p.m. when it's like peak hot. But still, the feet, keeping them as cool as possible, but at the same time, keeping them as dry as possible. So it's kind of, they're working against each other. It's interesting, you know. And last year, we managed it, you know, icing my feet on every break, just chucking them in an ice cooler, then wiping them down, powdering them, dry socks, keeping socks dry, but keeping me wet and cool at the same time without wetting my feet. You know how it is. It's very challenging, but it's key. You know, that's what I've learned. So I imagine running 100 kilometers over multi days is going to be very challenging, and the same thing is going to come up again. It all boils down to the team again. Like I said, the crew. I have the easy part, the running. I always say that, you know, it's everything else that's very important. I know that after a few days, especially, I'm not going to be in the headspace where I'm going to be worrying about my feet and this or that. That's where the crew really, really needs to step it up and come in. So I know that it's going to be very, very tough, very challenging. Last year when I did the run, I ran on average around 70 kilometers a day. But taking a positive out of it, I really feel that I could have ran more kilometers every day. And I could have, at the end of it, in fact, one of the concerns I had, because when you're trying to raise money for charity, people jump on board if you've got the story. And as funny or as sad as it sounds, most people get engaged when you either suffer or you don't manage your run. That's the reality. So last year when I actually finished the run, I was actually feeling pretty okay. I mean, I was a bit beaten up, of course, but I was feeling quite okay at the end. And I was concerned, as in, you know, should I fake it that I'm kind of not feeling good? Just so people can get more on board. Because what I realized over the last years is when I didn't manage my first run back in 2022, that's when people really jumped on board. It's funny, but it's the reality. So yeah, at least taking a positive out of last year's run, I feel that I can step it up a bit to around 2 full marathons, 2.5 marathons every day. But it's going to be hard, no doubt. We'll see.
Yeah, that psychology component of it is so interesting, of what we've normalized now. And I think we've pushed the limits on distance so much that now, as long as someone does it and they feel okay and they didn't fall apart, we're just like, oh, okay, cool, you did it. Good job. Congratulations. And I think that sometimes can play into some of that postpartum depression that you guys talked about. I've experienced it. I've talked to a lot of people who have before, where you did a great job, but you finished and you didn't fall apart. And we almost have this thing in our heads of like, well, then that means I didn't push hard enough if I'm not broken and torn up and destroyed or missed my goal by drastically. So it's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves. And it's hard to celebrate and to be celebrated that we did something hard, even if it didn't destroy us, because it shouldn't destroy us, right? That's not the point of the sport.
This is it.
Yeah.
What you said is exactly it. One, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. It's true. Again, I think if social media went around, that wouldn't be the case. And yeah, I think it's just human nature in general, you know. People like to watch people suffer. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think that's why it's very important to just zone in and focus on number one, as selfish as that sounds, and what you set out to do. But yeah, again, easier said.
Steve, you got a YouTube channel, and there's some great content on there. All the listeners here should go check it out and like and subscribe to his YouTube channel. I'll put it in the show notes down below. But I think one of the last videos I saw was talking about this. I don't even know if we're using the right term, but like a postpartum depression, post-event, post-race. And I shared offline just before we started recording that I'm kind of in this funk right now. I am 8 days out from the Old Dominion 100 miler in Virginia. You guys, if you were listening, I drove there. That's why Mandy keeps calling me a dirtbag, just for the reference point. I was sleeping in my vehicle and living at gas stations across the country. I went to the race. I went and visited some family for a few hours and then returned back to Colorado. So 30 hours of drive in each direction. But I was unsuccessful at the race. I went to mile 87 and I did not have enough time to complete the next 14 miles in the allotted time for the event. So I pulled the plug. There was a guy that was with me at the same spot, and he continued on, and he finished 20 minutes after the cutoff. So I made a good decision, and he regretted his decision. But driving home and not being successful in my event, and even 8 days later, as we're recording this, I'm still like in this funk, this fog of like, am I an imposter? Do I belong here? I've even like went as far as like looking back at my DNFs and my finishes. I have 15 100-mile finishes or more miles, but 15 100-mile finishes or greater distances, and 6 DNFs. So that's like a 71% finish rate. You know, I'm doing these mental games to try to bring myself out of this funk and trying to find my purpose back into the sport again. And I know I will, but it's just, it's right here, it's right now, and it's real. And I was just watching your YouTube video yesterday, and you really touch on this. And I've ran those 4 days, 5 days, multi-day events where afterwards you're just a mess. You don't know what to do. It's like a depression of sorts. So you had some great suggestions on your YouTube channel, and I want to just kind of like maybe revisit those if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very good subject to touch on, in fact, because as we're discussing, not a lot of people acknowledge it, and it's real. Like you're experiencing it now, and there's no real time limit as well on it. It can go on for days, weeks. That's why I think it's just very important to just try your best to pull yourself out of it as much as possible. But yeah, it's not easy. It like you said, it does feel like a depression. If I had to compare it to something, it really can take you quite low, actually. And that's why I think what's really important, at least what I found from my last experience, was one, to eat healthy or the right food right after. Because what I've done in the past is I've eaten junk right after one of these multi-day runs, junk food. I just binged on everything, and that just took me even lower. And that was really hard to get out of. So yeah, recovery I think is very important, not just in terms of taking some time off from running, but even in terms of nutrition and food. That's very important. And just giving yourself time as well to recover, giving yourself time as well to appreciate what you've done, giving yourself time as well to understand that you don't need to do something big, as soon as next week or next month. Just get outdoors, do something different. Doesn't have to be running. Spend some time with your friends, family. I don't know, get out, go for a small adventure, something smaller, just to keep yourself active. This is what I found really worked after Thailand last year. And it still hit me really hard, to be honest. It's almost a year ago that I did the run. And I still have moments when I think about the run that I still feel kind of, I don't know how to describe it, actually. It's a very weird feeling. Obviously, I'm proud of the accomplishment and all of that. But it just feels like, what's next? Something's missing. Again, I think it's in us as well. We don't run just because we feel like we have to run. We run because we actually love running. We like to be outdoors. We like to be exploring. So it does take its toll, to go back to routine after and get back into everyday life. You're no longer outdoors doing what you love doing. It can be hard, it can be tough. But the whole point is just to realize that there's something waiting just around the corner. There's the next best thing is always coming. It's just, you have to be patient and just live in the present moment. I think that's very important.
Yeah, Steve, your list of adventures and what you're doing and challenges, like Brian alluded to earlier, it's not necessarily that you're signing up and towing the line at official races all the time. You're really doing like treadmill challenges and different challenges on top of these cross country challenges. And I think it sounds like it works for you, but I know for me too, like I feel like I always have to have something on the calendar, and I don't right now. And it's every day I'm like, I need to get something. And I have something like really far out possibly, but I'm in that funk right now because I don't have anything on the calendar. And then it's just this low part of going back to imposter syndrome. Like, well, if I don't have anything on the calendar, I'm not really training. I'm not really running. What am I even doing in this space at all? Can I even call myself an ultra runner anymore if I haven't run an ultra in a year? So we play those games in our head a lot and beat ourselves up. But I think I like your tactic of going for just those small adventures, even if it's not a sanctioned race, and just figuring out a new personal challenge and telling the world about it because it's inspiring. And there's nothing wrong with shouting from the rooftops when you're doing something cool and awesome. And you're going to get the keyboard warriors who are, giving you a hard time for constantly posting. And hopefully they're small and few and far in between, but hopefully more than not, you're keeping yourself inspired and you're inspiring other people to just think outside the box and just really do what makes you happy.
This is exactly it. Again, just think about, unfortunately, again, social media is great if used in the right way. But I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves because of social media as well at the same time. We're at home, we should be resting and recovering. But at the same time, when we log into Instagram or Facebook or wherever, we're seeing someone just finished a massive race. So that, makes us even more like we itch to get out there and, do the next big thing. But if you just get into a mindset where you just focus on yourself and what makes you happy, this is what I've been doing over the last months. In fact, when I was in Thailand, just getting out there, running, no big runs. I've done a few in between, of course. But what I'm saying is I was appreciating the smaller runs even more. And something you mentioned is posting on social media keeps you in check as well. Even if someone doesn't comment or message you or whatever, you're inspiring someone, at least one person, to get out there and do something. So what I'm getting at is even that small run, which might feel like nothing for you, it is something for someone else. So it's just kind of playing around, with these little things, mind tricks kind of thing. So there's always something, to keep ourselves occupied with. Doesn't have to be big. That was actually fun. You mentioned the treadmill challenge. That was recent.
You will not be finding me doing that. No way, man. Do you find it more mentally challenging to do that than battling the elements? I know some people, it's a mixed bag. Some people love training on the treadmill because you don't have to think about the elements and everything out there. Others, it's a torture device.
That's exactly a torture device. Mentally, it's very challenging. I mean, there's no change in scenery. There's no distractions. Physically, though, I find it easier to be honest, because the belt is just moving, so you have to move. You can't stop moving. So you get into a rhythm thanks to the belt. But mentally, boy, oh boy, it's tough.
So you did, if you guys aren't following Move with Steve on his Instagram yet, you did 200 kilometers in 20 hours recently. Is that correct?
23 hours, 200 kilometers.
Yeah, it's 125 miles or so, right around 125 miles.
Yeah, so I spent 24 hours in the gym, and with rest and refueling and toilet breaks and all of that, I think it was 20 hours or something in total, running.
What was that environment like? Like, were the patrons of the gym and the gym owners asking you to sign a liability waiver every 5 seconds? Like, what? A long time on it. Because you're in that environment and it's very different, right? Than being out at a 200-mile race or running across the country. But when you're standing on a treadmill, like, surely there's a shock and awe factor for people who don't see this as normal activity.
It is. In fact, they did ask me to sign a form. Actually, go ahead and do it. I had to sign a form. Actually get on with the run in the gym, otherwise they would not let me use their gym. It's extremely boring. I mean, I managed to keep myself busy. Actually, I listen to podcasts. I actually learn some things as well on YouTube. I recently found that has been really great at keeping me distracted. So I just watch an hour-long different YouTube videos, learning new skills, or can be skills tied to my job and stuff like that. I don't really listen to a lot of music anymore because now my mind knows that a song is approximately around 4 minutes long. So that's torture as well. Although sometimes I do just play some inspiring or some really loud music just to get the adrenaline going. But otherwise, the best time though in the gym is late hours. There's no one in the gym. It's completely quiet. It's dead. And you get into a rhythm just listening to your feet hit that belt or the treadmill. Before you know it, a few hours have passed and you wouldn't even realize it. But it can be really tough, especially when you start staring at the screen of the treadmill. That happened as well at some point. And I started counting the seconds. But luckily I had a towel next to me and I just covered the screen with a towel. Yeah, I use that just for mental training, to be honest, nothing else.
What's the most bizarre or funny or surprising thing you've watched or listened to during these treadmill sessions? Anything super random
Most recently, actually, on this run that I did, the 24-hour run, I just mentioned that the best time for me is late hours where it's really quiet and no one steps into the gym. But some random guy actually showed up at the gym at 3 a.m. and he was drunk. And he was making really loud grunting noises for around 1 hour. And that threw me off completely. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard, to be honest. And it threw me off. I was really looking forward to that shift from 1 a.m. until around 5, 6 a.m. And when he showed up and he was just grunting in the gym, I was lost. I was completely lost. Really, really weird noises.
Was he working out?
Sometimes, I don't know what he was doing. I tried to... The gym was quite big and I was just trying to check on him. It's just the two of us in there. He would come next to me sometimes, lift weights for a couple of seconds, grunt, and then walk off somewhere, come back, do the same thing. It was a bit bizarre, but entertaining at the same time.
Steve, I did a little math, and 125 miles in 24 hours is about 11.5 mile pace. But obviously, you have to use the restroom, you have to refuel and get off the treadmill for a few minutes. So I'm taking a guess that you're running about a 10-minute mile or a 6-minute kilometer, roughly, in a pace. Are you undulating the terrain as well? Are you putting the vertical gain up and down just to kind of use a little bit of a different muscle group, or are you just running it flat?
Completely flat on this one. And that sounds about right, actually. 6 minutes per kilometer, because the treadmill setting was, I shifted between 9 kilometers per hour and 11.5 kilometers per hour. I was using that range. So it sounds about right, actually. You're becoming an expert on the kilometers and miles.
Oh gosh, I know way too much about treadmill speed and pace. Fortunately, I do have a treadmill right behind this camera. I have a Peloton, and I've had treadmills for, I don't know, 15 years. So I'm a numbers guy, and so I run all the numbers all the time. So that's why I was helping out our listeners by changing it to miles for them, because they're probably running the numbers game as well. So yeah, but I do play with numbers quite a bit in my head.
Yeah,
I'm not good at it though. The
you're doing a
problem
good
is
job.
I'm not good at it.
I struggle as well. I was going to ask, have you ever done any long treadmill runs before? As
I
in,
have, yeah, like 90 minutes. Like that's my long run on the treadmill, and that's a mixture. Actually, the Super Tech treadmills now, the Peloton here, can stream YouTube right through the screen itself. So if I put something on there, I can blank out just like you have done in the past. And I've used the towel technique at the hotel gym. I could get fixated in the numbers and just watch the clock just tick. So I'm like taking off my shirt sometimes and put my shirt over it, just because I didn't have a towel and I didn't want to get off, but I also didn't want to reset it and start all over again. So I've just used my shirt and put my shirt on the treadmill or the screen so I can't see the numbers, and try to space out. Yeah.
Yeah, I did one time. I did a 22-mile run on a treadmill. I owned a gym during COVID. Actually, Steve, I owned a group fitness studio, and we had insane wind in Windsor. It was just unbearable. And so I chose, and now I would just go face the wind after that experience. But I hopped on one of my treadmills in my gym, and I had some friends come, and they would do a couple of miles with me next to me. But it felt like 5 days, but it was 22 miles.
You mean 6 feet away from you, next to you?
Yes, we probably were wearing masks too while we were on the treadmill. But yeah, that was the longest. So watching some of your treadmill stuff is just mind blowing. But it goes to show that mental strength, and you can do it. You can do anything. You just have to have that mental strength to overcome those conditions and change the narrative of what you're telling yourself.
This is what it boils down to. This is what people don't get. Again, we're talking about running, something very specific, but it's like that with everything else. This is why I love running as well, because I actually apply that to my everyday life, or probably even indirectly without realizing it at times. We are capable of anything we want to do. Physically, we're all limited. I'm by far not the strongest runner. I'm not even the strongest runner here in Malta. And like I said, there's a very small population. But mentally, our minds can take us so much farther than we believe. This is what I've realized. Again, it's always important, when not to cross that line as well at the same time. But otherwise, yeah, we can always do so much more than we think.
What does your training look like on a weekly basis? Just as an example, like how many miles are you logging in a week? Are you the heavy mile guy or heavy distance guy? Because your kilometers, I probably stopped using miles, but are you the heavy distance guy, or are you using less distance? And are you doing some cross training in there? Just generally, what does that look like for you?
A bit of everything. So only recently I've really ramped up the distance or the miles, averaging around 200 kilometers per week, again, which is around 125 miles from what you said. In fact, the last 2 weeks since I've been in Malta, I brought that down a bit, but now these next 4 weeks back in the 250 kilometers, that's the plan. But yeah, not just running. Something I've learned as well over the last few years is strength training, conditioning, something which I used to really struggle with because I find it very boring. But now it's my go-to every day is mobility and stretching, something as simple as that. I just dedicate 10 to 15 minutes every day to that, and sometimes longer, if it's post-run and all of that. But I really try and mix it up a lot. Gym work, running, even my running. Most of my runs are very slow, just easy pace, zone 1, zone 2, mostly zone 1. I throw in some hills here and there, although in Thailand, in Bangkok, it's very difficult to find hills. So it's just flat roads. That's why I do a lot of treadmill running as well there, so I can get the incline. But yeah, some speed work as well here and there, but mostly just slow runs. 85% of my running, at least, is just nice and easy pace. I love running, to be honest. I love being outdoors. I love exploring. And that's why even now I'm back in Malta, I'm feeling a bit lost because I've run most of Malta's very small. It's only 36 kilometers long, not even the length of a marathon, and wide, only 15 kilometers, not even half a marathon wide. So I run because I love to explore. I love to be outdoors. I love to be experiencing people and all of that, when I'm outside running. Now that I'm here in Malta, I feel a bit lost, to be honest. Same thing, same place, same scenery. But it's been a while since I've been here, so I'm sure appreciate it again.
That's a ton of mileage, but I guess if you're running the cross country and you're planning on doing 100 kilometers a day for 30 days, you have to start somewhere, right? So
yeah, this is it. I think that keeping the mileage high is the best way to go, and then just bring it down a bit, before the actual run. I don't have a fixed date at the moment, so that's why I'm just running a lot. But I'm not complaining. I enjoy it. Like I said, I don't see it as training, to be honest. I think even if I didn't have a big run that I was aiming for, I would still be out there running a lot of kilometers. The important thing is I never force it. So if I don't feel like running, if I wake up tomorrow and I don't feel like I have 40 kilometers on the menu and I don't feel like doing those 40 kilometers, I will still run. So I'm trying to run every day, but I'll run less and then just play catch up on another day. I don't force it at all. Again, have to keep it fun.
Steve, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us today in our show and sharing just a bunch of different ideas, different concepts outside of our normal show of the ultra runner that's finished their first 100 miler or running 200 miles or anything like that. You're just bringing it from a different perspective, and we really appreciate it. You're definitely part of our ultra running community. You're running extreme distances over multiple days, and that is the definition of ultra running. So we appreciate it. Where can our guests find you at? Give us the Instagram and the YouTube stuff. I'll also put it in the show notes, but just for those listening.
Yeah, I'm mostly active on Instagram, Move with Steve, and the same, YouTube is Move with Steve. But yeah, just mostly on Instagram, keeping myself accountable, basically. It works, at least for now it is. So I really appreciate speaking with you, by the way. I didn't even realize that so much time had passed already. It's been really great chatting with you.
Time flies. Now, if only you could have done that on the treadmill, we could have knocked out a bunch of miles in your training, right?
There we are.
Maybe the next thing, record a podcast while you're on the treadmill and let us know how that goes.
I have been through too many meetings on the treadmill. When I worked for Parks and Recreation during COVID, I worked for Parks and Recreation in a small community here in Western Colorado, and we were all working from home. And I would just walk and put my laptop on the computer, and my head would just bob, and people were looking at me like, what is that guy doing? And my head's just bobbing, and I'm just walking along on the treadmill.
Mosh pitting.
Yeah, and they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm walking on the treadmill. Sorry.
In Malta, they would have made you go back to the office.
Well, yeah, we did eventually go back to the office. But while I was home, I loved it. So I got a lot of walking miles in.
Steve, thank you for sharing with us your stories. Amazing. Thanks for inspiring. Keep inspiring. We're excited to follow along and invite us on one of your adventures sometime, because we'd love to get out of Colorado and go run somewhere new and beautiful. Consider us for your cruise someday.
Yeah, we're definitely crew people. I don't know if I could run 100 kilometers for 30 days, but
No.
but I could drive a van for 30 days for sure.
That'll be. I'll take you up on that. That'll be amazing. You seem like really fun people to have around as well as a crew. Also, on the flip side, I've never actually crewed, so I would love to crew as well. To be honest, I'd love the experience. That's something that I actually really like to do. I'm just waiting for the opportunity. I think there's a lot to learn there as well by actually crewing someone. So yeah, we can scratch each other's back, as they say. So
Yeah.
That would be great.
Thanks again, Steve. Thanks for sharing all the little stories and accolades. We love it. We'll try to reach out again to you sometime, maybe after this current project, and see how everything went, and just keep tabs on you. Of course, we'll be following along on all your journeys, and we're rooting for you. So we appreciate your time today.
And likewise, I really appreciate it. And good luck with the fighting the calm down post run. So I'm sure you'll be over it in no time soon.
I'll be back. I'm always come back, right?
No doubt.
We always come back. Yeah, that's right.
Good stuff. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.